This is the AC30 hand-wired, and this video is going to cover a lot of the same area that the one on the C2X did in terms of the switches. So this will probably be a shorter video. Like the TBX, I'll show you the power up. This amp does not have standby, does not need standby. Let's power it on. And as the output tubes begin to warm up, you're going to hear a hum. And that hum should dissipate after all the tubes begin to draw current evenly. If you have an AC30 where that hum does not dissipate, you need new output tubes. If you have an AC30 where that hum gets really bad, turn the amp off. You're on the verge of red plating. Let's listen for it. A little bit. I guess this quad's a little bit better matched than the previous one. At startup, this one didn't have much of a hum to begin with. All right, quick note, I'm going to play a little bit. My wife is upstairs doing Zoom calls. Tis the year, I guess. So I'm going to be doing a lot of this with the master volume turned down. The master volume in stock form is a pretty crappy sounding cross line. They've got a bypass switch that takes it out of the circuit. The amp sounds better and louder with it out. But I've put in a post-phase inverter master volume, which sounds very good till about 10 o'clock and then begins to have weaknesses. All master volumes in these amps begin to lose the output tube compression and drive at certain levels. So below about 2 o'clock, this thing's a little less useful in terms of getting dirty sounds. In terms of clean sounds, it's great to about 9:30, 10 o'clock. So here, let's turn it down about here. If I wasn't confident in the sound of this master volume, I would not be featuring it on YouTube. It's a much better sounding master volume than stock. And if you want to hear this amp at full tilt, listen to the comparison videos of this and the C2 and the TBX from the other day. So we're on the normal channel, and like I discussed, I do not do the straight JMI normal channel because it's too dark and too woofy, and the stock one in this is too bright and anemic, or too dark and anemic. So this one has a lot more gain than stock. It's full lows without being woofy, and it's natural without being bright. As you've heard in the previous videos, it has a lot of gain available. But we're not going to get into that right now because of Zoom. On the master volume, like I mentioned, on the original, on the stock, they've got a master volume bypass switch. Which is not necessary with this master volume, so I made that a mute switch. So you can mute the amp between sets on stage if you wish. We're back to the normal channel. Instead of making this a bright switch, it's now a tight switch. So here's full lows and tighter lows. Notice these frequencies aren't affected, but this is. It can be nice to just tighten the low end depending on the band context. At higher gain stuff, it can keep mud and flub out of neck humbuckers especially. I went into this in a little more depth on the C2X video. It's a very nice thing to have. This makes the amp a little more versatile, and when it's in tight mode, it behaves a lot more like the non-top boost brilliant channel of 62 AC30. So that's nice to have. Let's move on to the top boost channel. And again, each of these switches that I'm about to show you, I went into in more depth on the C2X video. So watch that because it applies to this as well. So here's the basic clean AC30 sound with a Strat. This switch takes out the bright cap on the volume pocket. So it's not dark, it just doesn't have that glassiness. I'll exaggerate it. Some people find the AC30 too bright. This helps. Some pedals, especially overdrive pedals, can make this fizzy with the bright cap. So the ability to take it out makes it more versatile. You know, Fenders have the bright switched on, you know, super reverbs and twin reverbs and stuff, and a lot of players never use that bright position. This gives that option on the AC30. So with the cap on, which is to the right, that's stock JMI, just a little variation. Now the hot-cool switch in this amp in stock form sounds terrible. It gives a huge gain increase, almost unusable, and it gets real fizzy and harsh sounding because of the way they did it. I don't do the full tone stack dropout. I do a mid-range shift and what to my ears is a very musical gain increase. It's not just a beautiful thing. I'll turn the master volume down and do one higher gain a little bit. This kind of gives an attitude and snarl that I really like. And as I mentioned in the C2X video, even if the cleaner stuff, that mid-range shift, which frequencies get accentuated, which frequencies begin to overdrive first, can make this sound very much like some of the solid state and hybrid amps that the Beatles used for Revolver and Pepper. I'm not marketing it as that. I'm not promising that this is going to turn your AC30 reissue into a 720 or whatever, but it does give the general flavor in very nice ways. Versus, just compensate for the gain increase. So I find it very useful. I go into this in more depth on the C2X video. It's a little more convincing demonstration, I think, but I don't want to repeat myself too much. So I've got the bright switch is now a tight switch. I've added an actual bright switch, or actually debrightening switch on the top boost. The hot cool is repurposed to be something musical useful. I can also make this adjustable to give any range of gain you want, from a mild increase to quite a lot. Not quite as much or as ragged as it is in stock form, but I can replace this with a push-pull pot that is still foot switchable, and then you can really dial in how much boost you want. But for most players, this fixed boost is very useful. Whether I do variable voltage or the improved master volume, it's something I do recommend on all AC30 models that have a master volume. or I can add it to the TBX, though I try not to drill chassis. Variable voltage is my preferred approach because you have the most natural response at all output levels. Let me demonstrate one weakness of this. I can only do it briefly because of my wife zooming. So I'll start with the master volume up here. Turn that down. You begin to hear that the sound cleans up. It's because the output tubes aren't driving as hard. The output tubes aren't compressing. They're not beginning to behave non-linearly. The output tubes are actually cleaning up as you turn this master down. With the variable voltage, the output tubes stay working hard the whole time. With the existing cross line, this effect of cleaning up is exaggerated and cleans up about here. It's not a very good sounding circuit to my ears. Pre-phase inverter master volumes, like you might find on old Fenders, do the same thing where they will clean up as you turn it down. The phase inverter stops overdriving, et cetera, et cetera. It's not as big a deal on most Fenders because people tend to want a clean sound out of that amp anyway. JCM 800s, it's not a big deal when the phase inverter and power section begin to clean up because there's so much preamp distortion. Last thing, on this amp in stock form, the top boost and normal channel are in phase with each other, so you get additive gain like on a Marshall, but unlike on a Marshall, it doesn't sound fantastic on an AC30 in my experience. So I rewired this so the channels are out of phase with each other like you get on a JMI or the TBX. So if you jumper the channels, you can do the same thing with the bass increases and the mid-range scoops. If you back off on the treble, you can get some really nice full blue sounds. Let's do up a little bit more. So yeah, I really love the sound of the channels out of phase. The way they blend is nice, and it makes the amp much more versatile. You can't really chase the Marshall jumpered thing, but the ability to make this thing chase Fenders in jumpered is really nice. Any of the reissues can be changed. I can make the TBX to have them in phase with each other. I can make this obviously out of phase. I can make the CC and the C out of phase, so it's more convoluted with op amps. And any of them I can make them switchable. So you have the choice of additive or subtractive gain. That can get expensive to do on the op amp models. I wouldn't recommend doing that on, say, an AC15C or CC, because that's an expensive mod to do to a relatively inexpensive amp. Once you get into the price point of the TBX or hand-wired, I think it's certainly worthwhile doing. And it's also much easier to do on those amps. I would recommend to anyone to have them wired out of phase if they can afford the mod. It just lets you get all those sounds that the JMIs do that people don't know about, and let you have a Fender Twin hid inside your AC30.